The enforcer drifted into the system with a silence that made entire colonies hold their breath. Its hull reflected the pale blue of Earth from millions of kilometers away, a monolithic testament to alien superiority. Its sensors scanned the planet in calculated sweeps, evaluating every human installation, every orbital satellite, every defensive array. The aliens aboard the smaller scout vessels whispered their confidence, certain this species would crumble in hours, as all others had. They did not notice the subtle shift in the human fleets, the faint ripples of readiness hidden beneath calm exteriors. Commander Elias Thorne stood at the center of the Dauntless Bridge, his hands resting lightly on the console. He was older than most of the crew, lines etched into his face not by age alone, but by decades of decisions that could have ended in catastrophe. Around him, Lieutenant Maravos adjusted sensor arrays, eyes flicking from holographic displays to the approaching shadow of the enforcer. Their formation is linear, predictable, she noted, voice steady. Even with adaptive targeting, they leave gaps near the rear thrusters. Elias allowed himself a quiet smile. Small victories were rare, but they mattered. The Council of Aliens aboard the enforcer debated strategy. One suggested deploying plasma disintegrators immediately, another argued for psychological warfare. The enforcer listened, but it did not need counsel. Its experience across galaxies told it humans were fragile, easily frightened. Yet as it considered the calculations, it failed to notice the subtle signals emanating from Earth's command network, deliberate decoys, automated countermeasures, and human ingenuity wrapped in layers of apparent chaos. Elias had anticipated this arrogance. The Dauntless and its fleet had spent weeks mapping the alien sensor thresholds, decoding communication signals, and rehearsing maneuvers that would appear reckless but were meticulously timed. The humans could not outmatch the enforcer in sheer firepower, but they had something far deadlier, unpredictability. "Prepare the drones," he said, voice low but commanding. "Let's see how they handle humans who don't panic." The first drones released from Dauntless were small, almost insignificant, buzzing like metallic insects against the immensity of the alien armada. They moved in coordinated swarms, each equipped with adaptive interference fields designed to scramble targeting arrays. The enforcer's sensors registered them instantly and dismissed them as minor nuisances. It had done this before, and in its calculations, the humans would fail as all others had. The swarms, however, were a distraction. While the enforcer's attention divided, larger human vessels adjusted positions, slipping into blind spots and exploiting weaknesses in alien formation. On the bridge, Elias watched the alien reactions with keen eyes. The first pulse of panic flickered across the enforcer's communication channels, subtle but undeniable. The smaller aliens aboard its tenders could not comprehend the human patience, the willingness to bait and probe rather than attack directly. Every countermeasure they deployed was anticipated and neutralized. The humans did not fight with brute strength, they fought with understanding, with timing, with intelligence honed over millennia of survival. Mara leaned closer to the console, pointing at a holographic projection. "They are repositioning faster than their protocols predict. They don't understand the coordination. Every move we make, they overcorrect." Elias nodded, a spark of pride hidden behind his calm exterior. Humanity had survived against overwhelming odds before, and this was no different, except the stakes were galaxy-wide. Every second of delay, every hesitation by the enforcer increased the humans' advantage. Their ability to improvise, to learn, to anticipate reactions, was a weapon the aliens could not quantify. Even as minor victories accumulated, Elias reminded the crew that caution was essential. They had no illusions about the enforcer's power. One miscalculation could annihilate them all. But the humans had something the enforcer could not measure: resilience. Their history was filled with moments of apparent hopelessness transformed into triumph through ingenuity, stubbornness, and a refusal to succumb to fate. And as the first human drones began disrupting key targeting channels, Elias allowed himself a brief thought that made the corners of his mouth twitch. Sometimes the deadliest weapon was a human who simply refused to be intimidated. The alien enforcer, despite its size and technological superiority, could not comprehend that it was already behind. It had broken entire species in days, yet these humans were not merely surviving. They were learning, adapting, and turning their weaknesses into strength. Across the fleet, alien officers whispered confusion, their confidence eroding with every unexpected maneuver. Elias watched patiently, letting the Enforcer believe it still controlled the battle, even as human strategy unfolded like a trap meticulously set. And somewhere deep in the shadows of the Dauntless Command, he allowed himself a small, wry thought. The galaxy's deadliest Enforcer had never faced humans like these. Elias Thorne leaned back against the console, letting the rhythmic hum of the Dauntless engines anchor his thoughts. Around him, the bridge buzzed with quiet efficiency. Lieutenant Maravos's eyes never left her display, calculating probabilities and cross-referencing alien movement patterns. Across from her, Chief Engineer Anton retapped through energy allocation schematics, ensuring the ship's thrusters could sustain sudden, unpredictable maneuvers without overloading. Each human on the bridge was a master of their craft, yet each was also a student of improvisation, because in human experience, the unexpected was inevitable, and failure often punished the unprepared. "Commander," Mara said, her voice calm but edged with urgency, "they've deployed secondary interceptors. Small, agile craft designed to swarm and disable our drones. They are faster than predicted." Elias nodded, acknowledging both the threat and the lesson it provided. "Good," he said simply. "Then we'll force them to overextend. Keep tracking their vectors. I want their energy signatures mapped and catalogued. If we can predict their adjustments, we can make them miscalculate." In the alien command structure, confusion rippled. The Enforcer observed the human fleet, its colossal sensors probing and retracting in cycles of anticipation. Every human action seemed insignificant, yet cumulatively, they presented anomalies in its predictive models. The aliens whispered among themselves in harmonic tones, a language designed for efficiency and precision. They did not understand hesitation, improvisation, or humor. These were concepts humans wielded naturally, often weaponized subtly in ways the galaxy's most disciplined enforcers could not account for. Anton recalled out, pointing at the central display. "Commander, the interference drones are having unexpected effects. Their targeting systems are compensating for a non-existent pattern. Essentially, they are tracking ghosts." Elias allowed a slow smile, one that suggested amusement rather than triumph. Humans had long learned to turn misdirection into power. "That's the point," he said. "We teach them to waste their strength while we observe." Meanwhile, on Earth, civilian networks buzzed quietly, feeding data into the Dauntless. The planet's populations, though largely unaware of the approaching Enforcer, contributed unknowingly to a global lattice of information. Satellites, orbital sensors, and even amateur radio signals created a tapestry of intelligence the humans could process and adapt from. Where alien calculations relied solely on raw power and linear prediction, humans had experienced threading chaos into advantage. Mara adjusted the holographic interface, overlaying alien positions with anticipated human maneuvers. "They still assume we'll attack head-on. That's archaic, even for them." Elias allowed himself a chuckle, deep and restrained. The aliens had never encountered a species that understood the power of controlled patience. "Let them think that," he said. "Let them sweat while we plan, and when the moment comes, strike where it hurts the most, without them ever knowing it was coming." The Enforcer, massive and unyielding, began shifting in orbit, subtly repositioning to anticipate human intent. Its smaller tenders attempted to block likely vector points, yet each adjustment revealed cracks in their overconfidence. One human vessel, the Resolute, slipped through the re of the formation undetected, a maneuver that would have been impossible without the precise timing Elias had calculated over the past week. Anton grinned at the monitoring screen. "The re thrusters are vulnerable, Commander. If we target their junction points, we can disrupt the entire swarm before it reacts." Elias nodded. "Then we make them react. But carefully. No surprises that could backfire. We force them to expend energy chasing shadows while we plan the true strike." He looked out the observation viewport at the Enforcer, a colossus gleaming with cold precision. "They've broken every species in days, but humans," his voice softened slightly, carrying a subtle, almost teasing confidence. "Humans sometimes take their time." On board the Enforcer, alien officers argued over protocol. One insisted on immediate eradication, citing historical precedent. Another advocated for measured intimidation. The enforcer, colossal and self-assured, simply observed, analyzing human maneuvers against an internal database of failed civilizations. And yet, despite their confidence, subtle tremors of uncertainty emerged. The humans were unpredictable, not in brute force, but in intellect, in timing, in moral complexity. Elias turned to Mara. We need contingencies. If they anticipate these moves, what's our backup? Mara's fingers danced across the console, pulling up simulations and alternate strategies. We've prepared 3 layers of redundancy. Each human vessel has multiple escape protocols, energy reserves, and adaptive countermeasures. Even if the enforcer anticipates one tactic, we have at least 2 more to exploit their reaction. He nodded approvingly. Good. Predictability kills, chaos preserves. Remember that. While humans organized precision, aliens assumed control meant dominance. They did not account for subtle human traits, improvisation, resilience, humor. Small victories began accumulating. Intercepted drones redirected harmlessly into space. Communication scrambled just enough to confuse alien targeting. Minor breaches in their shield formations exploited without ever being noticed. Every human action, though seemingly modest, was designed to build a strategic mosaic the enforcer could not fully comprehend. T was already over. At one point, Elias allowed himself a brief, private observation of his crew. They were disciplined, calm, and professional, yet each bore the quiet mark of human ingenuity, a willingness to take calculated risks, to think outside rigid protocol, to sacrifice comfort for the greater tactical picture. Humanity had survived cataclysms, wars, and plagues precisely because of this combination: intelligence married to intuition, strategy tempered with daring. The enforcer, with all its technological supremacy, could not anticipate the depth of human adaptability. As the first night cycles passed in Earth's orbit, tension rose without panic. The human fleet moved like a single organism, each ship a cell acting with autonomy yet synchronized with the whole. Every decision reflected both strategy and morality. No human wanted unnecessary loss, yet none shirked responsibility when risk demanded action. Across the alien fleet, murmurs of confusion grew. Their calculations failed to predict these outcomes, their arrogance meeting the subtle, methodical reality of human experience. Elias leaned over the console again, reviewing energy flux reports from the drones. Remember, he said softly, almost to himself, this isn't about destroying them yet. It's about teaching them they underestimated humans. Every action should make them question, every maneuver a reminder that power alone doesn't win wars. Adaptability does. In the shadows of the Dauntless, Anton adjusted a calibration, Mara verified her projections, and the bridge crew continued their quiet ballet of preparation. Outside, the enforcer loomed, massive, confident, and dangerously misinformed. It did not know that humanity's true weapon was not sheer force, not firepower, not even speed. It was intellect, timing, resilience, and the unshakable confidence that some battles were won before a single shot was fired. And in that quiet calculation, the first seeds of alien doubt took root, small and almost imperceptible, but enough to grow into a vulnerability humans would exploit before the battle truly began. The galaxy's deadliest enforcer was about to discover that humans were not a species to break. They were a species that learned, adapted, and outwitted even the strongest of foes, often while the enemy assumed the fight was already over. The human fleet moved through the outer rim of the Sol system like a single, breathing organism, each ship following protocols carefully interlaced with improvisation. The enforcer, massive beyond imagination, floated above, its tenders darting in swarms to anticipate human maneuvers. It had already broken civilizations before. It had already shattered species. It did not, in its calculations, expect humans to behave with patience, strategy, and subtle humor. Commander Elias Thorne observed the display, noting the tiniest fluctuations in the enforcer's energy emissions. Their shields fluctuate when they compensate for our drone swarms, he said. It's minor, but exploitable. Prepare the vectors for micromissile insertions. Mara Voss adjusted the projections instantly, overlaying predicted alien countermoves, while Chief Engineer Anton Ree verified the thrusters recalibration needed to maintain agility. Every calculation mattered, and humans had long trained to adapt when everything threatened to go wrong. The Enforcer unleashed its first full assault, a synchronized barrage of plasma filaments designed to obliterate the dauntless outer hull in seconds. Alien officers assumed the humans would panic, their advanced sensors designed to predict behavioral responses. Yet the humans simply executed pre-planned evasive maneuvers, slipping through gaps the Enforcer hadn't anticipated. Each minor victory, a single drone disrupting targeting sensors, a misdirected plasma volley harmlessly venting into space, felt almost trivial to the crew, yet each moment added another layer of strategic leverage. The first surprise came from the Resolute, the human flanking ship. It darted between tenders, its thrusters silent except for subtle sensor interference fields. Alien officers, accustomed to brute force, could not process this. Plasma discharges adjusted too late. By the time the Enforcer reacted, the Resolute had embedded several microdisruptors within the tender's communication channels, creating confusion that cascaded like a domino effect. The humans had not destroyed anything yet, they only forced the aliens to expend energy chasing shadows, but that was enough. Elias leaned forward. Track all energy expenditures. They are misallocating their resources. Let them overextend. He allowed a quiet chuckle. They think they control the battle. Let's see how well they handle chaos. The Enforcer, colossal and calculated, became visibly frustrated, though humans couldn't see the subtle tremors across its armor. Its officers argued through harmonic tones. They anticipate our moves before we even make them, one insisted. Another proposed brute force recalibration, but the Enforcer overrode them, insisting on patience. Patience, it thought, would yield the human collapse. It did not account for humans' moral complexity, their discipline under pressure, or their unique ability to turn chaos into advantage. Hours passed. Small, almost imperceptible victories accumulated. A drone swarm neutralized a key targeting array on one of the alien tenders. A human vessel feigned retreat, drawing energy-intensive pursuit, then looped back to exploit exposed shields. Mara whispered calculations to Elias. If we maintain these sequences for the next orbital cycle, their energy reserves will be critically strained. Elias nodded. Good. Maintain pressure but do not overcommit. Let them falter of their own arrogance. Then came the first moral dilemma. A civilian transport ship, accidentally caught near the edge of the skirmish, risked alien plasma exposure. Several young officers argued for immediate evacuation, prioritizing the mission over civilians. Elias weighed the options, knowing every moment mattered. We do not sacrifice innocence for strategy, he said. Prepare a diversion while maintaining formation integrity. The humans who rely on us are part of the strategy. A small squadron executed a high-risk flanking maneuver, luring tenders away from the transport. The civilians were unharmed, and the aliens had wasted precious energy attempting to intercept, another minor but critical victory. The second surprise unfolded when the humans launched a series of synchronized interference pulses, temporarily destabilizing the Enforcer's shields. The alien vessel, despite immense power, had not accounted for distributed intelligence executed through improvisational timing. Multiple tenders faltered, their energy redistributed inefficiently. The Enforcer recalculated, yet every attempt to predict human behavior failed. It was a species that did not act predictably. It was a species that learned from observation, adapted in real time, and laughed quietly at the notion of defeat. Elias, Mara, and Anton observed as small victories compounded into operational advantage. They think breaking civilizations in days guarantees compliance, Mara said. They don't understand humans. We survive, adapt, and exploit every overconfidence. Elias smiled, the corners of his mouth tight with restrained amusement. And some of us sleep in the middle of it all. The subtle irony hung over the bridge, a quiet statement that humans did not need fear to survive, they only needed intelligence, timing, and adaptability. A new tactic arose from human innovation, decoy transmissions simulating fleet movements, causing the aliens to overcorrect shields and weapon arrays. Entire tenders were misdirected, firing into empty space as drones and smaller ships executed coordinated strikes in the shadows. Minor victories became cumulative, destabilizing the Enforcer's rhythm. Alien officers grew increasingly frustrated. Their assumptions about predictable species behavior were failing spectacularly. The climax of the escalation began when a human flanking maneuver exposed a weakness in the reed junctions of the Tender's formation. A calculated strike by microdrones disrupted energy conduits, causing cascading inefficiencies in the alien swarm. The Enforcer sensed something amiss but could not locate the source. Panic, subtle and almost imperceptible, began to ripple across the alien command. Confidence eroded as they realized that human adaptability was not a flaw, it was a weapon in itself. Elias issued precise orders: prepare for Phase 2. Maintain unpredictability, exploit every hesitation, and monitor civilian zones. Do not act hastily. Every overextension strengthens our position. The crew obeyed with disciplined precision, executing each maneuver as both strategy and art. Humans had turned survival into a game of intellect, and the aliens were losing by the rules of a species they did not understand. By the end of the orbital cycle, the Enforcer's tenders were fatigued, their energy reserves strained, their targeting confidence shaken. Yet humans had not yet struck a decisive blow. Every minor victory was intentional, designed to manipulate alien perception. Every overreaction by the Enforcer fed into the human strategy. The stage was set for a clever resolution, but the Enforcer still believed victory was imminent. That overconfidence would be its downfall. Elias looked over his crew, a calm, confident presence in a storm of tension. "They don't know us," he said softly. "They think the galaxy's deadliest Enforcer is unbreakable. They don't know humans. Not yet. And when they finally learn, it will be too late." Small, deliberate improvisations continued. Decoys, energy misdirections, microstrikes, but always measured, always moral, always strategic. Humans did not need brute force to destabilize a superior enemy. They needed intellect, timing, and the patience to exploit arrogance. Alien officers whispered concerns, yet the Enforcer refused to yield, convinced that only a species entirely broken could ever be considered intelligent. It did not realize that humans did not break, they adapted. They survived. They outwitted. And every miscalculation the Enforcer made only deepened its vulnerability. The first wave of minor victories closed the day. Human ships maintained formation, drones hovered silently like watchful predators, and the Enforcer floated massive and confident, unaware that humans had already rewritten the rules of engagement. Outside the viewport, stars gleamed with an indifferent calm, but the human crew moved with purpose and intelligence honed by millennia of survival. Elias allowed himself a quiet thought. Sometimes, the galaxy's most fearsome weapon underestimated the quiet genius of patience, observation, and adaptability. And sometimes, the humans who appeared calm in the face of annihilation were already several steps ahead, laughing subtly in a way the aliens could never understand. The stage was set. The real battle, the one that would shock even the Enforcer, was yet to come. The human fleet moved with a calm that belied the storm they were about to unleash. Elias Thorne watched the Enforcer's massive shadow across the stars, its senses probing for weaknesses it did not believe existed. The alien officers had miscalculated repeatedly. Their arrogance, now tinged with growing unease, had allowed humans to manipulate both perception and energy distribution. Yet Elias knew patience was still essential. One wrong move could turn their cleverness into catastrophe. "All ships report readiness," he commanded. Every human vessel confirmed silently, with calm precision. Mara Voss adjusted interference fields, creating lead anomalies in the Enforcer's sensor readings. Anton re-monitored microdrone deployment, ensuring power flux could sustain the imminent phase. "Timing is everything," Elias said, quiet enough that only he and Mara heard. "If we strike too early, they will adapt. Too late, and we risk exhaustion. We begin when they think the battle is won." The Enforcer's tenders, exhausted from repeated human misdirections and minor victories, misaligned their positions. Plasma discharges faltered, shields overcorrected, and minor gaps in coordination began to open. Alien officers debated whether to enforce a massive strike or regroup. The Enforcer, confident and imposing, ignored them, convinced the humans were finally on the brink of collapse. It did not notice the subtle patterns that had already been programmed into the human fleet's maneuvers. Elias gave the first command: execute Phase 1. Thousands of microdrones erupted from human vessels like a swarm of metallic insects, invisible to the Enforcer's long-range sensors. Their primary function was not destruction but disruption. Interference pulses targeted the energy matrix connecting tenders, destabilizing shields and weapon arrays. The aliens recalibrated instinctively, but every adjustment only amplified the disruption. Minor confusion cascaded into systemic vulnerability. The first wave of human ships, the Resolute, Defiant, and Vanguard, slipped through gaps in the formation, silent and precise. They deployed energy jammers directly into the Enforcer's sensor arrays, exploiting the exact vulnerabilities mapped during weeks of observation. Alien officers began to panic as systems overloaded momentarily. The Enforcer reacted with brute force, directing plasma volleys at the flanking ships, but the humans had anticipated this. They split in synchronized maneuvers, forcing tenders to overextend and further destabilize energy grids. Mara's voice crackled over the comms. Phase 2 ready, Commander. Interference optimized. Energy vectors recalculated. We control the tempo now. Elias nodded, eyes never leaving the viewport. The humans were no longer responding, they were dictating the battle. The Enforcer's arrogance, once unshakable, had become its blind spot. Elias initiated Phase 2, a coordinated strike aimed at the junction points of the tender's formation. Tiny micromissiles, precisely timed, targeted energy nodes, causing cascading power failures. Plasma volleys misfired. Shields flickered. Systems overloaded. The Enforcer could feel resistance, but could not locate the source. Its officers scrambled, attempting brute force recalibration, but every reaction had already been anticipated. Humans had studied them too well. The aliens' confusion grew into fear. The Enforcer, colossal and battle-hardened, could not comprehend the depth of human adaptability. Every maneuver, every minor victory compounded into a strategic masterstroke. The humans were not only surviving, they were teaching the Enforcer a lesson in humility. And then came the human trap, subtle but decisive. Elias gave the final command, Phase 3. Deploy decoy grids and execute the anchor maneuver. Hundreds of human ships projected false energy signatures, creating phantom positions across the battlefield. The Enforcer, attempting to predict human movement, concentrated fire on these decoys. Meanwhile, the true strike force, the Dauntless, Resolute, and Vanguard, slipped into blind spots, delivering precise electromagnetic pulses that overloaded tender circuits. The alien fleet began to falter. Systems failed sequentially, shields collapsed intermittently, and targeting became erratic. The Enforcer realized too late that it had been misled. Human ingenuity had turned its own power against it, exploiting every gap in protocol and assumption. Its officers attempted to regain control, but their calculations were based on a species that acted predictably. Humans had rewritten the rules of engagement. Elias allowed a brief, quiet smile. They thought fear would suffice. They didn't account for understanding, improvisation, or patience. Mara's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. They are faltering. The Enforcer doesn't know what hit them. Anton added, every overreaction is another vulnerability we've mapped. They are trapped by their own assumptions. The final phase exploited the aliens' fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology. Elias ordered a simulated retreat, baiting the Enforcer's tenders into overextending in pursuit. At the precise moment, the human fleet executed a sudden convergence, striking multiple vulnerable points simultaneously. Microdrones jammed communications, energy pulses disrupted weapons, and the main vessels delivered electromagnetic shocks to key junctions. Alien officers shouted commands into a system that no longer responded coherently. The Enforcer, once the epitome of interstellar dominance, trembled under a species it considered insignificant. And then it happened. The humans did not simply destroy the Enforcer. They neutralized its operational capabilities, turning its own energy against itself, rendering its tenders inert without unnecessary loss of life. The colossal ship hung motionless, systems compromised, its arrogance shattered. Elias allowed himself a rare exhale. They expected us to break. Instead, we broke their assumptions. Mara nodded, and in doing so, we controlled the battlefield without senseless destruction. Anton added dryly, humans always find a way, don't they? Elias chuckled. Sometimes, we don't even have to fight to win. The Enforcer, now stunned and incapable of immediate retaliation, processed the humans' unexpected victory. Its centuries of calculated experience across galaxies could not account for resilience married to intelligence. Alien officers whispered, or mixed with fear. They had underestimated a species that could adapt, improvise, and survive by intellect and ingenuity alone. Elias turned to his crew. Maintain formation. Do not celebrate prematurely. We have secured a tactical victory, but the lesson is clear. Humans are never predictable, never overconfident, and above all, never underestimate patience combined with intelligence. For the first time, the galaxy's deadliest enforcer recognized the truth about humanity. Humans did not merely survive. They observed, learned, adapted, and outsmarted. The species was not fragile. It was formidable. And in that realization, the Enforcer and its officers understood they had encountered a foe unlike any other, a species whose greatest weapon was not brute strength, not firepower, not speed, but intellect, timing, and the unyielding will to endure. Elias allowed himself a quiet moment of satisfaction. Humanity had not merely survived. It had outmaneuvered the galaxy's most fearsome weapon. And somewhere, deep within the Dauntless, he allowed a thought both humorous and true. Sometimes, the deadliest strategy is calm confidence, patience, and a species that occasionally falls asleep in the middle of the battle, because it knows the fight is already won in the mind long before it unfolds in reality. The Enforcer, massive and imposing, hung powerless. Its officers whispered disbelief, realizing the humans had outthought them at every turn. The first true lesson had been delivered. Intellect and adaptability could defeat raw power, and arrogance was a weakness no calculation could compensate for. Elias looked out at the stars, his calm demeanor unchanged, yet within him a quiet satisfaction that transcended victory. Humanity had demonstrated what few believed possible, that even against the galaxy's deadliest enforcer, resilience, strategy, and ingenuity could turn the tide. And as the human fleet prepared to regroup, ready for whatever challenge came next, Elias allowed a small smirk. The galaxy would remember this day not for the Enforcer's might, but for humanity's indomitable spirit. The Dauntless drifted in orbit above Earth, its crew quiet but alert, the hum of systems a soft reminder that vigilance never fully ended. The Enforcer, colossal and silent, hovered nearby, a defeated colossus that had once terrorized entire civilizations. Its tenders were inert, its systems compromised, yet it remained a testament to power, the kind that humans had learned to respect but never fear. Commander Elias Thorne allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. Humanity had faced what was supposed to be the galaxy's most unbreakable enforcer, and had emerged victorious, not through overwhelming force, but through intellect, patience, and adaptability. We didn't destroy them, he said softly, almost to himself. We showed them the truth. Humans aren't fragile, and arrogance is always a weakness. Mara Voss leaned against the console, eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of a plan executed flawlessly. They underestimated every aspect of us. Our ingenuity, our timing, even our restraint. That's what broke them. Chief Engineer Anton Rhee, ever practical, spoke from the rear of the bridge. And yet, the fleet remains intact. No civilian casualties, minimal losses. They still don't understand how a species survives against impossible odds. Elias nodded, his gaze lingering on the massive shadow of the Enforcer outside the viewport. They will remember this, whether they admit it or not. But humanity, humans will continue. We don't rely on fear to survive. We rely on intelligence, courage, and the refusal to surrender to assumptions. Outside, the stars seemed calm, indifferent to the drama unfolding beneath their gaze. Yet for the humans on the Dauntless, the universe had shifted in subtle but profound ways. They had proven, in a single campaign, that experience and strategy could surpass raw power, that moral grounding and careful improvisation could outmatch arrogance and force. Across the galaxy, civilizations would speak of this encounter for decades, and the Enforcer itself would carry the lessons, though perhaps too slowly, to prevent such underestimation in the future. Elias turned to his crew, a quiet smile forming. Prepare for the next phase. The battle may be won, but the war, the exploration, the defense of humanity, that continues. This is how we survive, and how we thrive. Mara nodded, already calculating contingencies for potential retaliation, while Anton ran through energy audits and system diagnostics, ensuring the fleet remained ready for anything. The calm, deliberate preparation was as much a part of victory as the engagement itself. A soft alert flickered on the console. A minor anomaly in distant sectors, a signal the aliens could not yet comprehend, but humans would notice. Elias tapped the display, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Another opportunity, he murmured, almost wryly. The galaxy doesn't wait, and neither do we. He allowed a brief, subtle humor to enter the moment, a recognition that sometimes survival wasn't just about battles won, but about knowing when to act and when to observe. As the crew continued their work, a quiet sense of triumph settled across the bridge. Humanity had faced the galaxy's deadliest enforcer and had prevailed, not by sheer might, but through intellect, courage, adaptability, and unwavering confidence. They had demonstrated that humans could outthink even the most formidable adversaries, a lesson that would echo across the stars. And somewhere in the depths of the universe, the Enforcer and its officers would pause, reconsidering their assumptions about fragile species. They had underestimated humanity. They had learned, perhaps too late, that some species cannot be broken, not because they are indestructible, but because they are clever, patient, and unshakably human. Elias looked out one last time at the expanse of stars, the faint glimmer of distant systems promising new challenges. A subtle, quiet smile touched his lips. The humans were ready. Always ready. And the galaxy had just learned the first of many lessons. Never underestimate a species that thinks, adapts, and perseveres. Humanity had survived, and in doing so, had proven that true strength was measured not by destruction, but by intelligence, courage, and the audacity to endure. The stars watched silently, and humanity continued its path, undaunted, indomitable, and unbroken.